It's Wednesday. Let's chat. Hi, I'm Kanan Chandran, publisher of StormAsia.com, and this is our regular series of Wednesday web chats, the WED Web Chat. This series has taken us through the COVID journey, and we have had a lot of fascinating discussions about a variety of topics. Now, many of us are going back to work, and in that process, we are meeting our peers and our colleagues and our superiors and our industry players again, and that's always great. Now, for some of you, it might be the first time stepping into the office, so it might be a bit of a challenge because this could all be very new to you, right? Now, as we journey through our careers, we often require help from our colleagues, our friends, our family, just to get advice and to understand where we are and what we plan to do in the scheme of things. Now, today's discussion is about the mentor-mentee relationship. I know when I was growing up, there was no such thing, but I always had a lot of advice from superiors and from colleagues and other industry players, which helped me in that process of trying to understand what I was trying to achieve with the work I wanted to do and where I should head. Now, today's discussion on this mentor-mentee relationship is different because it's a more formal process. There are rules of engagement, there are ways of doing it, there are timelines, and there are roles that need to be observed and adhered to. And this makes it for a more structured process. Now, today's session, we've got filmmakers in our midst. Okay, now this is a different sort of industry, not the usual in the office type of thing. But I mean, there are certain things that you need to observe even within this discipline. But I think you also need the freedom to be creative, to be able to express yourself in this medium. And that would require a different sort of mentor-mentee relationship. Now, this we have today in our midst three filmmakers who have come through the 8th edition of SCAPE's National Youth Film Awards series of Pitch Lab TV series, Pitch. What they're doing is going to be talking about their experience about being a mentee. And we've also got an experienced filmmaker who will be talking about his role in the industry and how he could serve a very useful role in the process of bringing a bit more of understanding into what's expected of the various participants in today's session. So, who do we have today? We have Olivia Griselda. Now, Olivia is a writer, director, producer, Singapore-based Indonesian, and she most recently directed Rite of Passage, a dance short film. She also directed, wrote, and produced the romantic comedy short film, Just Because We Are Friends. Olivia graduated from the Singapore Management University, majoring in marketing and psychology. Now, besides filmmaking, she has recently been doing stand-up comedy as well. We have Jedidiah Huang, is a screenwriter and playwright. And his debut short film, titled Swing, was nominated for the Best Sound Design and Best Cinematography at Point and Shoot 2020. It was also featured at the Asia Rising Film Festival 2021. He's currently a writer on 2 TV shows for Omen Studio and Oak Tree Films. He also dabbles in spoken word poetry and was the winner of the Gosteloa Creative Writing Competition in 2019. Gosteloa Spancer is an actor. Spencer made his professional acting debut in A Boys to Men 3, Frogmen. And then he went on to multiple supporting episodic main characters in local broadcasting channel long-form drama productions like Tanglin. Following this, he landed lead roles in a number of MediaCorp Vasantham series. Other than acting, in the last 2 years, he has also produced, art directed, and assistant directed. Thean-Jeen is a showrunner, which is the executive producer for productions. He's a writer, director, and managing director at Weiyu Films. In his 3-decade-long career, Thean-Jeen was responsible for popular and award-winning television drama series like The Pupil, Code of Law, 128 Circle, and This Land Is Mine, as well as the feature films Homecoming, Bring Back the Dead, and The Big Day. Now, this series is part of the Jobs 20XX work in progress series of discussions in partnership with OUE. limited. So what we want to do is try and bring a bit more clarity into the process so that anybody who's looking to find a career in whatever industry may get some answers from today's session. So now, can I ask Olivia, Jedidiah, and Spencer, what difference you saw in yourself after going through the mentoring process?
We had to develop a TV series pitch Bible. So like, for example, determining what is the story about, who are the characters, the settings, what's the journey that these characters will go through. And I think what was very helpful from the mentorship, what I took away, one of the things that I took away from it was like how important it is to look at things from the bigger picture. Because as a storyteller, sometimes I get caught up in the little details. And I think at the end of the 6 weeks program, when we were like pitching it to the mentors and also to our classmates, sometimes when we are too caught up in the details, like the story gets lost. So I think the importance of being concise, keeping in mind the audience, like so as to engage them to hook into what the story is before going into more details.
Pitching aspect, because I haven't had much opportunity to do many pitches, and so like when I write the story, I know what I like about the story, but like this pitch that really helped me to see through the audience's eyes and to think about what do they like about my story, and then to really push that forward in the pitch.
The series pitch lab was really useful to me because for me it's like I'm a very imaginative person, so I'll just keep writing my stories, and sometimes that might lack a bit of structure. I think my biggest takeaway from my mentor was how important the character development was to the story, because you can have all these great ideas, but if you don't sort of flesh out your character, then you don't have an intense or a complex enough story that grips audience. And that's one of my biggest takeaway from this program.
Okay. Thean-Jeen, based on your experience hands-on in the 3 decades that you've been in this industry, do you see a significant difference in approach to people who have jumped into filmmaking or are guided into filmmaking?
Well, first off, I would like to say I personally didn't have a mentor myself when I entered the industry, not because of a lack of for one, but simply because I think at the time that I entered the industry, even at the time that I went to school in Boston, there were no filmmaking was not well, in today's context, it would have been considered a non-essential option of study. And when I entered the industry, I worked alongside many other people who came to filmmaking through other disciplines, engineering, chemistry, simply because there weren't film schools. Film schools was not a thing. So that was the context. Along the way, I have done mentorship programs. I've mentored filmmakers and budding filmmakers who have created short films and other projects within the context of something like what our other 3 panelists have gone through. And I think the more significant, I think the value I think that mentorship kind of comes across is not so much the technical know-how or the principles, because nowadays you can pretty much get that from the YouTube or from anywhere on the internet. This was not accessible to us then, but I think what is more kind of valuable is the experience of the mentor, basically learning, so to speak, from the mistakes that and the experiences, learning from the things that they've done right and the things that they've done wrong, so to speak.
Yeah. So in many instances, I guess the mentor-mentee relationship is mentee-led, right? Because you're not going in there to be inundated with advice. You want to seek clarification. Uh, would that be an accurate assumption of the roles played by these two, the mentor and the mentee? How is it like for you, Spencer?
I think it was yeah, you could, it's a little different because there's so many elements that goes into creating a story in some sense, or creating a pitch. I mean, even though it was called a series pitch lab, it had a lot to do with how we come up with our story. And there are a lot of foundational work that sometimes, if you didn't go to a film school, or if you didn't have the opportunity to go to a film school, that your mentor is going to be the one that's going to be able to help you build that kind of foundation. And I think the good part about having a mentor is that it's not just an academic foundation, right? But it's also like this person has worked on set, has been on set, has pitched before. So they have that element to bring to the table to tell you like, oh, well, you know what? Yes, I know that's what you would get in school, but that's not what flies in the work world or something like that. So I guess, having that sort of real world experience really helps. Yeah.
Okay, so so a lot of it is very practical. This pitch that you did was quite focused in that you had to. There was a definite deliverable at the end of it, was it? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's 8 weeks. So at the end of 8 weeks, we were supposed to pitch our story ideas. We were selected based on whatever story we had sent, whatever they deemed fit to start off a mentorship program. And then from then we had 8 weeks to develop it in a sense that a potential broadcaster or a production company would see some value in our pitch, and would take it on. So yeah.
Okay. So for all of you, I'm just going to quote something that Sam Raimi, the U.S. filmmaker, said. This is quoting him. Well, I think like any filmmaker, when I really listen to myself and I'm open to my true feelings and I don't compromise, I don't try and satisfy this person or that. I don't act out of fear that someone else won't like it or that someone else will look down upon it. When I really listen to myself, that's when I think that people might recognize my voice. End quote. So, in his perspective, and I think in the perspective of many filmmakers, they want to impose their creativity, their vision on the end product. Do you need to tweak mentoring so that the voice isn't lost, the authenticity of the person trying to create the end product is still intact? And how do you do that? Thean-Jeen, you've mentored a few. How do you achieve that balance?
I think it's not so much about a balance. I think for the mentoring process, I think anyone who facilitates a mentorship or a mentoring process has to bear in mind, I think that when it comes to filmmaking, it's a very specific and unique process that depends not only on the sensibility of your mentee as a filmmaker, but also the sensibility of your mentee as a person. So the last experience that I had mentoring 3 different groups of filmmakers, young filmmakers, students, so to speak, they produced 3 very different films. And my approach wasn't necessarily to impose experience or impose advice onto them, but to basically guide them towards finding the voice that finding their own voice within the project. And to kind of shape that, in a more structured and in a structured way that that sort of was more aligned to, I think, the deliverables that they had to produce. So it's not so much about for me, the mentoring process isn't so much about me saying you should do this or you should do that. It's more about asking questions so that they can ask themselves the same questions, and sort of discover the answers on their own.
Olivia and Jedidiah, did you have that experience? Were you able to refine and better define your story pitches as a result of the mentoring process?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not sure what was Le's perspective when he was mentoring us, but from my perspective, I think all the advice he was giving was really like well suited for like the pictures and the stories that we were creating. Like, I mean, I've seen Le's uh Invisible Stories, HBO, and it's a very different series from what I'm creating, which is like a dark comedy animation. But the advice he gave was really, really good, and it it completely changed my story, but it made it a lot closer to what I really wanted it to be. Yeah. So and I think he did the same for like many of I think Spencer can attest to that as well. He did the same for like many of our other pitches, and So I think from my perspective, his advice was really well tailored and really well suited to all of us.
Okay, Olivia, how was it for you?
I think I could relate what TJ was saying. So for Jessica, when she was mentoring me, so when she gave me feedback, sometimes she doesn't give like a specific fixes, but more of like the general direction and how things can be improved. And I think as a filmmaker, that can be quite challenging, but it can also be more freeing. And I think that gives me also more ownership in the choices that I make as a storyteller. Yeah. So I think the choices, I mean, the feedback that she gives me is also it can be also encouraging. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So for all of you who've been through this process, what do you take away from this that you could apply to the other aspects of your life or your work that you might do down the line?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's interesting to see how someone who's been around and does the thing they do. And I guess for me, what I've really taken away is that it's really important to be open, to generally be open to a lot of things, and not to hold on to things too tightly. I think as creative individuals, we tend to be very like tight. We tend to have a tight grip as to like, okay, this is really what I want. But it's in letting go that you are able to really evolve your ideas. And I feel that's something that you really learn from industry professionals who've been around for very long. And I'm sure like TJ can attest to that. It's just, if you hold on too tightly to something, you can't change it. You can't develop it into something greater. So learning to let go when you've done your deed. Learning to let go is one very important thing I've really learned. Yeah.
So an open mind is useful. Huh? It's probably quite handy and necessary, in fact, if you want to get into a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I think I kind of like semi-agree and disagree with the quote you brought out earlier. Because it's I mean, it's one to say, I'm just gonna put out whatever the hell I want to put out. But I think being open to criticism and feedback is extremely important to refine your voice. You don't let it define your voice, you let it refine your voice. And I think having that kind of mentality really helps.
Sorry.
No, I just want to say I completely agree with that.
Okay. Does that apply because somebody like Sam Raimi is established and people expect certain things from him? But for others who are finding their way up the ladder, there's some degree of conformity involved. I mean, you have to look at your audience. Two, you have to look at the organization you are representing. And then you need to bear in mind that there are areas that you need to be not overstep, right? So does that have an impact on how you develop your content? And would that have longer term sort of repercussions in the larger scheme of things when your pictures are pushed into the international market?
It definitely has to impact like the end product, because I mean, like, filmmaking is such a collaborative art form. It's like I don't think any one person can lay claim to like a film and say this is entirely me, right? And so I think with all these like different pressures, like, it's definitely, I feel like with filmmaking it's really important to see as a collaborative effort. And personally, for me, like for my role as a writer, I see my role as a writer to create a script that will allow everyone involved to be as excited as possible for the project. So, and then everyone else, when they come in, they'll input their own skills and expertise and elevate the whole thing. And so I try not to think of myself as having like too much ownership over like any project that I'm involved with. Yeah.
Okay. Olivia, how about you?
I think as a budding filmmaker, like one of the challenge that I face is the resources, like finding it could be like learning resources, like these kind of opportunities that SCAPE provided. But just like in a way, when you have like limited resources, limited budget, like how do you put something that you really are passionate about? How do you bring it to life? So in terms of like I mean, what we were doing in the workshop, it's we were creating like a TV series, but then even in the feedback from the judges, I think for my idea, one of the judges was suggesting that I could even tailor it into like a short film format. So I think there's that how to say, I believe that it's also very important to always be open and to be able to adapt to whatever opportunities that are out there. So for example, if there's an opportunity for me to turn my series into a short film, and then maybe I think like, yeah, maybe I can go that route, and then maybe down the line, if the short film is successful, I can still go back to the TV series idea. So I think it's very important also to be agile and to always be ready whenever there's an opportunity that's available to strike the opportunity. Yes.
Okay. I think there's a lot of general principles that would apply in anything you do, right? To be flexible, to be receptive to external influences and stimuli, and then to, tweak your end result accordingly. Thean-Jeen, for you, when you are working on films, do you do you deliver what you feel like delivering, or do you have to address the needs of those who are funding you?
I don't think it's a yes or no kind of question. I think it's more a question of I think the unique the interesting thing and the frustrating thing about filmmaking is that makes it different from other art forms or crafts, as you would call it, is the fact that I think all you need to write a novel or paint a picture is yourself. Whereas if you're going to make a film, you need a small army to do it. And I guess unless you inherited a couple of $1 million that you can afford to throw away, somebody needs to fund that dream. So it's not so much a question of saying, yes, I'll do this, or no, I won't do this. For me, it's more a process of A, communication, and B, negotiation. So it's a question of understanding what you want to achieve, and being able to communicate it to everyone around you, whether it's the investors or whether it's the technical crew that you find yourself on a set with, or an actor who doesn't seem to get what you're trying to do with a scene. So I wouldn't say it's a question of saying, I want to do this and I don't care, if you like it or not. It's a question of trying to make people understand what you have in your head, which is why I think, as a writer or a filmmaker, I think your biggest skill isn't really the talent that you own. It's your ability to communicate what's in your head, and have people understand what it is you're trying to do. Because basically what you're trying to do is take a dream or a notion that's inside of here, and translate it into something that's very physical and tangible.
How important would you say is the business mentoring element? Is that something which is emphasized much? Because Singapore, while it has an industry, it's not a huge industry. And a lot of talent seems to flow out as well. So how do we make the most of what we have here? What are the business opportunities that exist?
time and money. That's pretty much. Yeah, I think one aspect of mentoring probably is the fact that that can probably be expounded on a bit more is the reality of filmmaking, because like I said, it's about taking a notion or a dream and turning it into something tangible. To turn it to something tangible, you need tangible things. You need people, you need places, you need equipment, and now in this world evermore, you need a solid financial framework, you need a solid legal framework. So I think it's not so much, I think, yes, I think if your question was, does the business side of show business need to be focused on a little more moving forward, I would say yes, that's probably what mentors can bring to the table as we move forward. Because in terms of how to make a film, I had to read books, I had to kind of go to school to sort of frame that aspect of it. But in today's world, I think you could probably learn the basics or the basic principles of filmmaking or writing. You could go online and look at a script format. You would know what a script format is in a few minutes. But I think what mentors can bring to the table is more the more practical aspects of going back to communication and negotiation. How do you essentially work with other people to make that a reality?
So for all of Olivia, Jedidiah, and Spencer, how much does the business component weigh on your mind when you're creating something, and does it influence the outcome? Olivia?
For me, it does, because, like, for example, I'm currently making an animation comedy short film, and I really believe in the message that the film will carry. So it's dealing with like female sexuality, and so we were like, when I was coming up together, we know that it's gonna be like very scrappy, like it's gonna be independently produced. So I think from the get-go, when we know that the budget is gonna be limited, like in terms of finding collaborators, so that's like one element that is also affected in a way. So like, for example, when I pitched my story to like potential collaborators, and thankfully a lot of them, they were like really excited about the story. They believe in the idea, and even with our limited budget, they really still believe in the idea, and they were like, oh, we'll try to make this work, like even lower than, like maybe lower than commercial rate, but they try to juggle like multiple jobs and like make it work together. So I think that also affects like the how fast we can finish the film, because people are juggling their other projects, right? So that is, I think, the practical reality, where we're like, okay, at the end, we still just want to finish the film, no matter how long it takes.
I think it really depends on what I'm writing. So like there are some scripts where I write and I don't want to think about all these like production concerns. I just want to write what I think is like a really great story. And so these stories, I would just write them, and I wouldn't think about it. And like I see it as like a exercise in like writing, and yeah, and also it's like it could also eventually become a sort of like calling card. Like if I create a script that's really really good, and then I can become a calling card for myself as a writer. And then there are some scripts where like I really want it made, and then I wouldn't think about like how to fit it to a network, but I would think about what networks can fit what I'm writing, if that makes sense. And so I would think about who I can pitch it to, and then I have to think about which aspects of like the project I'm married to, like which are the aspects that are like non-negotiable, and which are the ones that I'm willing to like change and massage and negotiate. And yeah, so I think like TJ mentioned, it's really a lot of negotiation and communication.
I mean, most definitely. I think even in our series pitch lab, the mentors, were quick. I mean, I don't know about Jessica, but for me, like Le was quick to say, "That's not gonna fly. No one's gonna understand that. No one's gonna get it. We don't understand you." He's very quick to tell me these things because it's a fact. And he will also say, "You know what? That's too long. It's getting boring. They're not gonna buy it." It's true. It's a selling game at the end of the day, and no and we have to you have to pitch your story in like 5 minutes to someone, even if you have 5 minutes, and chances are that person who's going to fund your film has already heard of something similar. Like, for example, when Jedidiah thought that his idea was really unique, Chun Chae from HBO just shot him down and said, "I get this every week." So it's like, wait, what? So definitely learning how to pitch, learning how to sell what you have is really important. I mean, those things don't really change much, isn't it? I mean, in any industry, like there are a million people selling water. It's how well you sell your water that's going to get people to buy that water, and that's basically it. I mean, for me, I came from acting, then I went to do production, and then I went to do writing. So I've learned to sort of like not hold on to it so tightly, because my goals is, I think, as a startup, um, to get your name out, to get your show out, and then maybe later on you can, when you make a name for yourself, when you have, like DJ said, when you have a bit more funding, when you have a bit more support and collaborators that are willing to fund you, then you can throw in more ideas, then you can throw in more of you in some sense. That's how I sort of look at it at this point.
How hungry are you guys in terms of wanting to stay in this business, or you're just doing this for now and later something else will come along and this can always be a
Oh man,
hobby?
I don't think so though. I think that's like the misconception that people really have. Filmmaking is not a hobby you choose to pick up, man.
Oh, that's what the Apple iPhone had say. Everybody can be, a filmmaker. You got your phone, your camera, and go ahead and shoot, edit. You got it there, right? But I mean,
Man, no,
reality is another story. But yes,
it's
but
not a glamorous job at
Yeah.
all. I mean, there's nothing glamorous to being this at all. It's only glamorous when you hit the stage, but that's like, I mean, look at the guy that won Parasite, right? Look at how he looks. Like, I bet you he didn't start looking like that. But by the time you get there, you would have like had a whole bunch of screws that are out, your hair is falling off. It's all it's tough gig. Yeah. And I think it's not a it's hard. I mean, it's not a it's you should be hungry. I mean, think about it. We all did this 8-week series lab after we have a day job. So we finish our day jobs, we finish whatever we have to do, and then we go and do this series lab because we're truly passionate about putting out our story. So I think it shows that we are. You have to be hungry, otherwise you just die out. Production work, you die out in 1 week. So why choose that?
voice of experience, Thean-Jeen, this is your main thing, right? So were you hungry or was it just opportune?
No, I think the question is really, you're right in saying that, yes, today anybody can pick up a phone and make a short film. But the question really is, could you do it every day for the rest of your life and upon demand? That's kind of what separates you that's what kind of separates being an amateur from being a professional. So the question is more whether you want to be a professional, because if you're a professional, that's what you got to do every day for the rest of your life. A lawyer doesn't wake up and go, I think I'll take this case, but maybe tomorrow I'll just take a break. A surgeon doesn't decide, doesn't always get to choose, the patients that he likes. In that same way, I mean, as a scriptwriter, if you find yourself going, okay, I'm only going to do the work that I like, then I think you're questioning. Then the question is, it goes back to the question: how hungry are you? Not just in general, but how hungry are you to be a professional in the industry?
Yeah. So how important is hunger? Because I think in today's context, there's money available. A lot of investors are game to put money into new ventures, new ideas. Is it I mean, if you're overly hungry, sometimes you lose the edge as well because you're so focused on delivering something that sells, as opposed to somebody who's got a great idea, develops it, no real need to fulfill it, but then it's brilliant, and so somebody might put money into that. So how do you balance that out when it comes to the crunch, when you want to put a production out there?
I think you just have to put on different hats. So if I have a writer's hat on, I'm not necessarily thinking always about where this idea is going to go, or who it's going to appeal to. I might be more interested in what the story is and who this character is. If I'm wearing a director's hat, I might move from story into how do I shoot this practically, how do I find the locations that I need. So sometimes it's about I guess in a way having multiple personalities and many different voices. So I think when Spencer said, they look like filmmakers might look like they have a screw loose in their heads after a while. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a total untruth. You do have many different voices. It's just if you learn to listen to the right voice at the right time, then maybe that's one way to go on your journey.
What have you been able to achieve in 6 to 8 weeks? Are they sort of effective for the here and now, or is it something you can take beyond that?
In terms of the usefulness of the now, like for example, like the awareness of the mentors in terms of the industry. Like I think like what you were saying about the business sense, like for example, what kind of shows or what kind of formats sell. That's like very interesting to learn, because as a writer, I think I tend to be like in the bubble, and I'm not really sure, like I don't really think so much about the practicality or the commercial side of the idea, right? So just to hear that from the other side, from the people who are in the industry and more familiar with this knowledge, I think it's eye-opening. Yeah.
Okay. Jedidiah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like in terms of like the now, like I mentioned earlier, my story the story I pitched was completely changed and improved, and I had like a completely new like perspective on the story, and that was super helpful for me. And so I think like in the now, that was what really worked. And but for the future, like the pitching skills I learned, the episodic structure that I learned, all these like really like I guess you could say like fundamental skills, fundamental like business skills and writing skills. I think these are things that will now like stick with me and like be at the back of my mind whenever I approach a pitch or when I approach a new project.
In terms of the film industry, what do you think could be done to improve the ecosystem for newcomers as well as the experienced hands? What would you like to see in it, Spencer?
Oh man. I think it's hard. I think it's also very how do I say ambitious to take on what I'm going to say. Structurally, there is no real, like, how do I put it, like understanding as to what happens below the line and above the line. The lines are always gray in our industry, and like TJ said, you have to put on many hats. And if it's already the case in the Western world, it is intense in our world. Like, we tend to have to put on a lot of hats to be able to push out one thing. So structurally, that's something that I think could be better. There are no unions or guilds. There are no minimum wage or that kind of stuff. So people do get overworked. And from like having worked from the English side to maybe the Tamil side, and then with MediaCorp and all that, budgets get lower. The access to highly talented and skilled individuals also become a lot slimmer. And then a lot of people do a lot of things, and there are no ways in which you can sort of govern and say he is this person and he's that person, but because everyone is able to put on many hats. Like today, assistant director can be an art director tomorrow. Like these things still happen. So these are things that I think definitely, hopefully, in the future we can sort of have. But I be honest to say that that's a very ambitious sort of hope.
Okay. Jedidiah?
I mean, I completely agree with what Spencer said. I mean, especially with what the unions and guilds. Yeah, I mean, I think at least like some kind of like support system for like especially like newcomers. Like I think like entering the writing. I did a bit of acting in the past, so from there I got a sense of like the wages for like actors. But entering writing, I think one thing that I really struggled with was having like no reference point for like how much I should be paid as a writer. So that was a pretty difficult thing for me to navigate as well. And I wasn't
You-
really sure who I could reach out to like talk about this, and like to ask is this fair? Is this okay? So or like how much work should we be doing for this amount, or like what's expected of me? So I really always like practical like the professional side of it. I feel like there could be more support. I'm not sure what shape the support should look like though, whether it be like a union or some kind of like organization. Yeah, I'm not so sure.
So you're looking for some sort of structure, right? I mean, because you've been
some sort of structure.
raised in an environment where structure is important.
I consider myself more as an industry outsider, so I'm not like I don't do like production like day to day. So I have like a day job in a news media company that like pays my bills. So I do this I do filmmaking like on the side. So I think one of the things that I struggle like at the start as an outsider is finding like collaborators, like because I think usually like people in the film school or in the media stream in school, they tend to be in the same clique, so there isn't really much intermingling even between like for example live action filmmaking and animation filmmaking. Even though like the industry in here is already so small, but there is hardly like intermingling between these two communities. So when I saw like SCAPE was running the animation story visions lab, they was focusing on storytelling on animation format. I think I also happened to have the idea that was right for that format. So I went to pitch, and then I ended up winning the best pitch. And then I met so many like animators there, and they are like so friendly and so like open to collaboration. So I think it is very encouraging to have this kind of platforms that are carving out, whether that's like organized by SCAPE or like by organizations. Even like I don't know, down the road, like there's a possibility if I could like work with Jedidiah or Spencer, like just like meeting peers who are also in the early stage of their career is also always very encouraging. To I guess that also drives the hunger for me to stay in the industry as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thean-Jeen, from the voice of experience, what more can the industry do?
First off, I think I would disagree to some extent that there isn't a structure in the industry. There is a structure. It might not be an ideal structure or the expected structure, but there is a structure. I think the question really is for anyone entering the industry is how you plug yourself into that structure and what you want out of it. Because I mean, I think if you look at if you look at other industries, I mean, if you look at even anywhere across Asia, I think the film or the media industry is a sprawling kind of a messy industry, and that's also partly because of the nature of the projects, because no two projects are ever the same. So we're not an industry that's making widgets. We're an industry that's that's trying to create. I mean, your aim with every next project is to make it different from the last one and everything else that's in the market. So you can't always rely on the same standards. But I think it's more a question, but I would say for newcomers entering the industry, yes, the bar is higher because in my time, maybe there was, maybe the pool of people involved in the industry was about that much. So everybody knew everybody. But today you have film schools and polytechnics that are graduating, 100, 200 people. So yes, you do get lost. You do have the potential to get lost in the forest. So the question is really, how do you become the taller tree or the tallest tree in that particular jungle? It's not very. Honestly, I don't think it's very difficult to be involved in the local filmmaking industry. If you want to know who's who, all you have to do is turn on the TV, watch a local program. The credits come on at the end of it. So I always say there's no excuse. People say, okay, I don't know anybody, I don't know how to network, I don't know who to write to, I don't know where to go. Just turn on your TV every night. Look at the credits of any local production. But the question is, does anyone entering this industry actually? Are you all actually watching? Are you actually supporting the local industry? If you aren't, then how do you expect the local industry to give back to you?
It's that old chicken and egg situation, right? Thank you, all of you, for sort of jumping in with all your various perspectives on this issue. I think it's great that we have a film industry to start off with, and I think I'd like to see it grow and develop and new products to come out and much more entertaining things out there for us to view and to enjoy and to put Singapore on the map as well. But I look forward to all of you producing fantastic things for us to look at. Olivia, Jedidiah, Thean-Jeen, and Spencer, thanks for sharing your views and your thoughts, and to the audience for being there, and to OUE for partnering us in this series of web chat discussions. Thank you. Have a great day.